All right, hello and welcome again to a new episode of the KewCast. I'm John, and I'm joined again by my good friend Eddie.
Hey, Johnny.
How's it going?
It's going good. I haven't seen you for a while.
Yes,
before today.
It's been a couple of weeks. Yeah, our schedules haven't been meshing lately.
We did our show last Tuesday, so
yes.
But since then I haven't seen you.
Consistently, we've been doing shows, but yeah. Playtime, we got some in today. We've got some paddles to talk about.
Man, you wore me out today.
Yeah, I was tired. I think it was the reverse. I was more tired than you. I played for like 3 hours this morning, and then you and I.
Were you inside or outside this morning?
Outside.
Yeah, so.
Which it was brutal.
Yeah.
So hot. I'm not complaining, though, because I am enjoying my summer, the end of summer, and I'm not looking forward to the cold and the winds and the rain and snow that comes with our winter here in Colorado.
Yeah. We'll be inside, though, doing our thing at Third Shot or Boulder Pickleball or one of the other indoor places that we get to enjoy.
Exactly. They are popping up everywhere, and I'm happy for it.
So what'd you do this week without me?
That's a good question. Well, my wife, Michelle, had a poetry reading. She's a poet in addition to her real job at the Nature Conservancy. So she got to she's written several books, and she read some of her poems from a book she published a few years ago during the intermission for a string quartet up in Fort Collins. And the string quartet was the Red Rocks Quartet. Fantastic musicians. Like, they played classical, and then the last half was like all kinds of stuff, like Muse. The band Muse translates really well to classical. Yeah. So that was a really good time. Good to see Michelle, do her thing. She really loves the poetry. How about you? Did you do anything fun?
Well, just more pickleball. I used to play down at this place called Congress Park down in Denver.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. They had a really nice open play community. And there were some noise complaints months ago, and they since scaled pickleball to basically nothing and spent a ton of money on tennis courts there that nobody uses. It's a real shame because the investment of capital into building those courts is not insignificant.
Yeah, they were dedicated pickleball courts, right?
Yeah, a couple.
Yeah, and then they just shut it down because they complained.
So they moved everybody to MLK, which they have a few dedicated courts and a few converted tennis courts. But I went down there, when was it? This weekend. And man, it was... Every court was full with 4 to 6 courts waiting in the wings, solid players, all 4-0 and above, younger people for the most part. Really a fun time. Really a good group.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I haven't been to the MLK. They should try quiet paddles. Give everybody a diadem hush.
No, we don't want to do that. Their emergency rooms will fill up too quickly.
What about a diadem hush with a gamma library ball? That would be nuts. It wouldn't be pickleball anymore.
Yeah, and I got to play with a paddle that we'll talk about here in a little bit quite extensively, and had a lot of fun with it.
Which one?
It's the Body Helix,
yes.
the X4, which is a real surprise from them.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about that.
All right. Yeah, let's save that for the head of the show, but we should get into a advertisement. So we do have another title sponsor, same one this time, Centerline Athletics. And Eddie, you're more of a fashion hound, I would say, than I am.
Well, let me tell you, it was not cool out when I went to MLK. It was quite hot. But the Centerline clothes, man, it's like closest thing to wearing air conditioning on your body because it breathes so well, keeps the sun off you. I mean, it is just about as high performance as you can get for those that play in the heat.
It definitely does wick the moisture away, cools you off pretty quickly. And my thing especially is the sun protection. It is SPF protected, all of their clothes, and that's pretty huge for me. But yeah, I'm really cautious, and I play with like a really thin hoodie. I would love to see that in their lineup next.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, like one of
absolutely
like the really high-tech performance T-shirt they have.
Yeah.
Hoodie in that.
That would be perfect.
Good stuff. All right, and thanks for the sponsorship.
And 20% off to people that are using the John Q code.
That is right. That's key. So, all right, let's move on to latest news and gear gossip. So I fixed the poll so that the bots couldn't attack. It's 1 vote per device, and that worked out great. There were about 400 votes over the past week, which is a representative sample size, and it was nearly a tie between the Pickle Hurricane Pro and the 11.624 Monarch varieties. So, I mean, literally it's like 5 votes. As of now, like 5 votes have the difference. So the Monarch edges out slightly the Hurricane Pro. So I will do the Monarch first, the 11.624 Monarch review. I'll try to get that out this week, actually. If I don't get it out this week, it'll be early next week. And then the Pickle Hurricane.
So you're going to do all 3 Monarchs, the Jelly Bean, the All-Court, and the Control?
I think so. I'm going to focus mostly on the All-Court and Control. And the Jelly Bean will be, I'll mention it and provide some stats. But
I think that you're going to like them.
I do. I've been playing with them for a week
good.
now. And no spoilers, really. I don't mind talking about it on the pod as well. But the All-Court is my favorite, which is surprising because I'm a big lover of Kevlar paddles, which the Control is their Kevlar. But man, the All-Court, that raw carbon fiber, it gets slightly better spin, and that extra pop and power you get from that layer of fiberglass in there is just really nice on a wide body paddle. So I've really been enjoying that.
I love the Huarache since the beginning, but it's one criticism that I had was just a smaller sweet spot because of the smaller face size, and they've addressed that and made really, I think, something special.
Yeah, it's a really good paddle. So it'll be a positive review for sure. But yeah, look for that.
What do you think of the look?
You mean the shape?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people are like, oh my God, that's a weird looking paddle,
It takes a bit to get used to.
Yeah, but I think all wide body paddles look kind of funny, like a pizza spatula. But I think they did a good job. I'd say in terms of the aesthetics, the Fat Boy probably is the nicest looking in terms of the overall shape, not just the graphics, but the overall shape. Something about it is nice. But I'd say that the Monarchs, they're close. I would kind of tie those with the Volair Mach 2 Forzas.
When I first opened it up, I'm like, I don't know if I can get into this shape, and now I don't notice it anymore. I actually think it looks pretty good.
Yep, same.
Well, looking forward to the review. I think it'll be a good one.
Absolutely. And the folks from Melin reached out and want to do the same as what they were doing with Chris Olson on the Pickleball Studio.
All right.
And have a 24-hour code for 20% off Melin hats, which I forgot I was wearing one, but I always do. So
that's a new one.
No, this is an older one. I just cleaned it.
Okay.
But yeah, Melin hats. I'll put the code up on our podcast next Wednesday. We set it to go on live on Wednesday, that code. So if you want, they're expensive hats. They're like $80, but 20% off is a sweet deal on this. I definitely will use our code to order some Melins, but it's not up yet. I don't know what the code's going to be, something involving John Kew, but that's exciting. And thank you to Braden, because they reached out to him after Chris's code did so well, and he looped me in on an email, and he was like, "John's the guy you guys want. He's more into Melin hats than me." So thank you, Braden. That was very very kind of you.
What's that style that you're wearing there?
Oh, this one is the Odyssey Stacked Hydro.
Got it.
They're not $80 or $70, but that's still an expensive hat, but I'll get into more details next week. But like you rinse them off in the shower after you're sweaty.
So easy.
Yeah, and you just hang them up to dry, and they're good as new the next day. Eventually they're going to be destroyed, but this is the first one I had, and it's stark white, and it still looks good, So really good hats. Next week, we'll have the code.
Nice. My favorite is the trenches, sort of I'm not wearing it today, but the flatter brim, sort of the more full in the front. But I've got, 4 or 5 of them, and they're fantastic.
You were the OG on the Melin hats, Eddie. All right.
Good stuff. Nice.
All right, let's move on. So,
wait, before we leave your poll, I noticed that there were quite a number in the other category. Did anything stand out in your review of that?
So the Spartus Odyssey is something that a lot of people in that poll are saying they want to see reviewed.
Okay.
I did reach out to Spartus. They're going to send me one next week, and we'll play with it.
I love a heavy hitter because my puny arms need.
Oh, come on. You were lighting me up today with those drives. Like Kwangdong today. My God, Eddie. We'll get into that later. All right. So JOOLA has been making quite the news, turning lemons into lemonade.
Hard
I would
to
say.
keep up with everything that's happening with JOOLA.
Yeah, I mean, they got sucked into. They started the lawsuit after the kerfuffle with the USAP, but then they put out the mod TA-15, and I just put up that review of the mod on Monday, so that's live now if you haven't seen it yet. And they've got the new 3Ss that all the pros are playing with that are strictly UPA approved for tournament play at the pro level. And they're apparently releasing those publicly in a couple of weeks. So there was question whether or not they're going to do that. And I heard from some people that other reviewers that they asked and JOOLA told them no, because they're only for the pros. But I think they've changed their mind, because I reached out to them today and they're going to send me one. I'm thinking probably next week, so the 3S. And the rumor is that the 3S is in between the Gen 2 JOOLA paddles and their Gen 3. So Gen 2 being their thermoformed that hit like thermoformed paddles, Gen 3 being their foam-enhanced paddles that hit like cannons, right? And I think that's probably the case, because I saw Ben Johns playing with the 3S during some of his matches over the weekend at the latest PPA. So if Ben Johns is playing with it, it's not Gen 3 level power for sure.
So, but when I hear something in between, I think Gen 3 construction, but detuned.
They sound the same as the Gen 3s, and that's how I keyed into Ben playing. So he during his match, his finals match in mixed, when he was playing with Emily Waters, he was playing with that 3S. And so was Anna Bright on the other side of the court. And their paddles sounded the same, and they sounded much lower in tone than your typical polypropylene core. So I don't know what the 3Ss have in them. It's either foam enhanced to some degree, or it's maybe a different cell size for the polypropylene. Because if you look at the paddle text, they also kind of have a deep thud. And Elise paddle has always been, had like cannon sound and didn't sound like a typical polypropylene. And those are Gen 1, but they hit like a cannon also. So who knows what JOOLA's doing? I don't know yet, but we will find out soon after they send us one and to play with it, and then I'll have to dissect it.
What's the shape on that? A Perseus?
It's going to be all of them. So it's going to be Perseus, Magnus. Tyson was playing with this weekend. Anna Bright was playing with her Scorpius 14. Colin Johns was playing with his Scorpius 16. So all the things, all the toys will be coming in the 3S. I'm pretty excited to hit them because, as I said in my review of the mod, TA-15, I mean, things play fantastic. So do the Gen 3s. Whether or not you want to have the argument that that's too much power, I think it could be a valid argument for sure. For the game of pickleball, they played fantastic. Now there is the issue of, the issue was whether or not the break-in period was just a path to the court breaking. Because there were not a lot of, my Colin John Scorpius broke, it was core crushed, and it went from, the slight increase for the break-in period and power to it became completely uncontrollable overnight because of the crazy power, and then sounded different, and then you press your fingers in it and it crunches. So that's how you know it's a compromised core. So we don't know that yet, whether or not this propulsion core technology has some inherent flaws and they're going to break. But we do know that JOOLA's been good about replacing the paddles. And then the other question about the mod, it was whether or not it's going to be delisted also by USAP. I don't think they're going to do that because there's too much liability for them during this ongoing lawsuit. And, it's just kind of a mess. But that brings up the issue. It's weird that JOOLA has these two new paddles that are approved by different agencies. And I kind of get the history of it because they put the mod TA-15 out because it was approved by USAP. And then after USAP yanked all their Gen 3s, they were like, well, we've got this paddle they certainly approved. They were supposed to have analyzed it and looked at it, and they'd certainly approved it. So let's put that out. I get the impulse to do that, and it's probably a smart move, right? Recoup some of the money that they lost with all of their delisted paddles. But then the whole 3S thing came out, and I imagine that was in the works for a while. After the news about the delisting came out, they probably had that in the works and then released it. But I think it's confusing a lot of people who aren't deep into the paddle space. The average person who watches PPA and follows a little bit of news about paddles is probably like, okay, they're conflating the 3S. What's 3S versus the mod TA-15?
They just want a paddle that their friends aren't going to give them a hard time about.
Yeah, exactly. But they apparently are quite different. And I do think what we're going to see with the mod TA-15 is a more muted paddle, something in between the Gen 2 and Gen 3
JOOLA the 3S
paddles. Exactly. Did I say mod?
You did.
Okay. So the 3S is going to be more toned down. Thank you, Eddie.
You bet.
You're always catching all my mistakes. I'm glad you're over there. Not just for that, but that's a perk.
Well, you know which model to set aside for me, right?
Which one?
The Scorpius.
The 14 Anna?
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
It's just the bright yellow. You love the bumblebee look of it.
I'd be happy if they didn't do colors. White and black.
I did like the mod.
It looks sharp.
Nice and sleek. I don't think it was like intentional. It's just like, all right, let's do something quick with this.
Out, right?
And get it out. But man,
I never liked the gradient color scheme.
They're trying a little too hard there.
Yeah.
So, and the other difference between those two paddles is that the 3S is UPA certified. So as of right now, pros can play with it in a PPA, and presumably if you're an amateur also playing in a PPA, you can play with it. But you're not going to be able to take it to a USAP tournament or any tournament that's sanctioned by the USAP and play with that. But you would be able to play with the mod at USAP tournaments but not at the PPA. It's crazy.
Perfectly muddy,
It's crazy,
John.
Right. So, yeah, it's unfortunate, I think, that both of these are out at the same time. Like I said, I do understand why, but I think it's very confusing for most people. And I do have a couple. Did you have something about that?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, there's no clarity here, so it's...
No. I did have another brief conversation with Jason Aspis just to follow up on some of the issues we brought up last week with the UPA certifying the the Gen 3S paddles. And basically just asked them, I'm like, all right, so, our podcast got some traction. People were chatting about it. And we've heard from some smaller companies that, the 72,000 price tag annually seems high. And, he confirmed that is an interim price that only JOOLA is paying right now on a monthly basis, which would total to be 72,000 per year. But he said they don't know if that's going to be the price next year for the annual fee. He said it certainly will go up, but it might come down a little. So that's kind of around 72.
And that's kind of the base, isn't it? Before you add in the variations of different models, and
it's an annual fee. Yeah, just to be able to have your paddles in the pro game. Right. But it's only the pro game at this point. And then there's $5K per paddle and the $1K per variance on top of that. So not cheap. But, he did say that he wanted to clarify that when UPA goes to the amateur ranks in 2026, so we still have some time before then it's not going to be the same pricing structure for smaller brands who want the UPA stamp to play in amateur tournaments. It's going to be much less. He said much more comparable to what USAP is doing. So it's not going to be the same across the board. It's, his reasoning is that if paddle companies, the 20 or so companies that are actually active in the PPA with pros and MLP, they need to pay more. And the reason being is that there's more testing, more rigorous testing involved, according to UPA. We'll see if
a company meets that sort of the pro standard, will they sort of be automatically put into the amateur standard? Will they have to pay again?
For UPA?
Right.
No, I think if certainly if they're paying for the pro, like let's say Paddle Tech,
then they're good for everything.
They're good for everything. Yeah. That's my assumption. I didn't ask Jason that specifically, but that would be weird if they had to get, another annual fee on top of that for. I would imagine that the UPA stamp would work, for amateur as well. Probably not in reverse, so an amateur stamp go to the pros. But anywho, there's that, and then there's the different standards between the UPA and the USAP. As we talked about last week, it seems that the UPA is going to be more strict with their standards and have deflection that reflects less power in paddles, and then eventually an exit velocity that's going to be lower than what USAP is using. So USAP seems to be the sanctuary right now for hotter paddles than the UPA, which I think probably makes sense because, at the amateur levels, it's kind of fun to have more options. At the pro levels, they don't need, their technique makes up for their, powerful paddles, I would say. I would not, I probably would want to see a pro match using the Diadem Hush just as a freak match, but it would not be good viewership because the points would end very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people still want one standard for all, one set of paddles for all.
Yeah.
People want to play with what the pros play with.
Yeah, for sure. I think that will be an appeal when we get to 2026.
Yeah.
Is that a lot of people are going to either have sideways glances at people playing with hotter paddles that aren't allowed at the UPA certification process, or just like you said, you want to play with what the pros play with, and it doesn't feel as good to play with something that's not.
Well, that's part of why these companies invest so much in their athletes.
Yeah.
They want to be able to sell the Ben Johns paddle to the public that may have some affinity to Ben.
Sure. One last thing. I heard some speculation that, what about instances where there's a parent company that owns more than one paddle brand? Mm-hmm. So, for example, Pro XR owns PaddleTech right now. And is Pro XR going to have one annual fee, and then they're able to license all their PaddleTech and Pro XR paddles? And Jason said no, that's going to be per paddle brand, so PaddleTech and Pro XR will both have to pay. And I think the speculation on that was, now everything's going to become more centralized and people are going to consolidate paddle companies, and you're not going to see many smaller offshoot paddle companies. I think that's still going to be the trend as a result of all of that. That's one aspect where each paddle brand will have to pay. So it's not like you're going to get away with something by having a parent company that owns 3 or 4 paddle companies.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Having a weekly call with Jason now.
The last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of news. Okay. I think that's all I wanted to talk about for news. Anything else on your radar?
Let's jump into paddles. Before we do that, speaking of JOOLA, there was some news about Andre Agassi.
Yes.
Signing on with JOOLA. I don't know if that means a paddle or something else, but
I saw the same. The picture I saw, I was like, is that Dana White holding a JOOLA paddle? The president of the UFC? Mm-hmm. I was like, no, that's Andre Agassi. They look kind of alike.
I didn't notice that.
But I don't know what that is. He was pretty tight with that
Komodo brand.
Komodo, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for a good while. But I don't know. Maybe he's going to be a senior pro there.
He's fully into pickleball now.
Yeah, he is.
No going back.
He is committed. All right, we hit with some paddles this week, Eddie. And why don't we start with the new release this week? So Selkirk released a new SLK paddle.
Really impressive paddle. And
this is called the Halo Pro. And so it was just released today. So they sent me one, and I thought this was the only shape. And I was like, cool that it's a standard shape, but very short handle on this. And I was like, well, cool that they're doing kind of a standard shape, but I love my wide bodies with a longer handle. So
Same.
that was going to be my one complaint. But I did see a couple of other reviews for it today, and I think they do have another shape in this with a longer handle. The issue with that is going to be that it's going to be more narrow and a smaller sweet spot. Anyway, I think there are options. If not, I'll put a note up on the podcast and post. But yeah, this is their first Kevlar, their entry into the Selkirk paddle lineup, and we both got hit with today. I mean, it is sharp. 6-0 spearheaded with the ruby, that really nice contrast with a red Kevlar face and white trim. But it just looks sharp, still looks sharp. And it's a really cool weave that they have on here. It is a Kevlar carbon fiber weave. It's not 100% Kevlar. So similar to the Apes and like several other companies that do the Kevlar.
I was thinking it looks like dog bones.
Dog bones? Yeah, it does kind of. Yeah, I mean, it's not twill. It is like capital letter I's going up and down the paddle face. But you and I hit with it today.
What did you think?
I enjoyed it. It's definitely not a power paddle, but as expected. I would put this... Oh, another thing is it's thermoformed, so it's not a Gen 1 paddle. I would put it in an all-court category, leaning heavily into control, like closer to control than most other all-court paddles. Good sweet spot. Like I said, the handle's not for me. I like my 200 backhands. I was still able to kind of do a 2E with this.
Yeah, I had a hard time with the 2Es.
Yeah.
I felt like the handle was short even for a 1E.
Yeah.
At times. It does give it a nice sweet spot having that big face.
Uh-huh.
I think for a intermediate, high intermediate player, I think this is a nice all-court solution. I think it brings Selkirk kind of to par with where other companies are. I don't think it necessarily pushes the envelope of technology, but it definitely is a solid offering and gets them to where, frankly, they ought to be.
And it's fairly reasonable. It's $150 for this paddle. This is their kind of budget line. But, I think that's a fair price. There are other comparable ones for $130, with other companies. And I do have a discount for this, so you can use that. I'll put it in the description. You can get it with Selkirk. It's a weird thing. So they give you gift cards in tiers according to how much you're spending. So I think it's basically the equivalent of 10% and not coupons and gift cards for the Selkirk store. So
okay.
Anyway, the paddle I think plays pretty well. It doesn't feel like a 14 millimeter. It feels more like a 16 millimeter. The sweet spot's nice and large on it. It gets pretty good spin. I ran the numbers. I'm pretty sure it's right around 2,000 RPM, just over 2,000 RPM. And power and pop are, kind of right at the median, if I remember correctly. That's kind of what it felt like to me today on the court. You got enough power because it is thermoformed. Didn't feel like a Gen 1 all-control paddle. But it definitely wasn't blowing you off the court by any means.
For me, it's not my kind of paddle. Mm-hmm. I prefer something with a little more real estate on the grip. Mm-hmm. So for that, I'd probably lean towards another brand. But for what it is, I think it's great.
Or their other shape.
Other shape, yeah. We didn't get to see that. Good point.
Alrighty. Let's talk about the Revolin paddles. These are interesting to me in terms of technology. I should have brought the second one. So they have a hybrid shape and an elongated shape.
This is the hybrid, right?
That's the hybrid, yeah.
It's a high quality paddle.
It's a very high quality paddle, and they're using a peel ply now, which is great because it gets good spin, so a raw texture. But it is not raw carbon fiber. It's a raw volcanic stone texture. It's actually basalt that they crumble up and mix in with some epoxy.
They call it Lava Flex.
Lava Flex, yeah. But I mean, kudos to them for thinking outside the box and creating something new in terms of the layup of the paddle. And I was chatting with the co-founder of the company, and she sent me some articles, and some of it's, kind of proprietary, so I don't want to, spill the beans on their technology, but they are using basalt layers in here in addition to like fiberglass, and I don't think there's any carbon fiber in here. And the article I was reading on the basalt, there are some properties of it that are unique and stand out compared to carbon fiber and Kevlar and that sort of thing. I need to read it a bit more to say for sure. I don't want to say...
It felt very carbon fiber-like.
Yeah, well, in terms of the feel,
yeah,
it's very, very akin to carbon fiber. There was a kind of a buzz when you hit off center, like a vibration frequency that I didn't care for. I think that could be shored up with some perimeter weighting, some tungsten on the edges to shore that up. But otherwise, I'd say that the power and pop are average on this this is a Gen 1. I'd say it's average for a thermoformed paddle. It's not bad, but not overly powerful. Control on this one is good. It's pretty wide.
Yeah, I didn't notice the buzzing feel.
You didn't?
But I did notice some stability issues.
Okay, so it's twisting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I need to play with it more. I will. I'm going to put some perimeter weighting on it. I think it would really benefit.
I agree.
With the Slyce cap. I don't know if
it's also
you can.
A short grip, though, like the Selkirk.
Oh, one thing I did find impressive. This is a 3D printed handle.
It's a really nice handle.
Yeah. So That's cool. I don't think you definitely won't be able to take the stock cap off and replace it with a Slyce, but you'll be able to wrap some tungsten around it. So yeah, I'm glad to see they're pushing the envelope in different directions, with the 3D printed handle, which I think handles, we need better handles on average overall in pickleball because we got so used to a couple of years ago having that exposed polymer, and that became outdated. And some people still do that, and other people will just cover it with strips, and parts of it are squishy. And we need good handles on.
Well,
these
what did
paddles.
you think of the 3D?
I like it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very stiff, as you would expect, but I'm migrating toward that stiffer feel. I used to like a softer handle, so I'd do some
I think between
overwraps.
this one and the next paddle we're about to talk about, they're just two solid handles. I like a stiff handle. I like firmness, and they've kind of nailed it.
And it's not too thick. I think it's just over 4 inches circumference.
Yeah.
So
I just wish it were longer.
yes, on the hybrid, it's a little shorter. I think it's like 5.25. They could have gone out to 5.3 or even 5.5 on this and done well. The elongated does have a longer handle.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think I saw that one.
Yeah. So, overall, I'd say this is positive feels on this Revolin. Definitely better than their first attempt. I do love where they're coming from with Revolin. They're trying to build a more sustainable paddle that doesn't dump plastic into our environment as much. And their first one involved hemp and some other biodegradable things. It wasn't a very good performing paddle, but I loved the idea. And this one, they stepped up and made a solid performing paddle.
And made in the USA.
Made in the USA. That's another thing.
That's awesome.
And with the peel ply, it gets good spin. I think it's just under 2,000, if I remember correctly. It doesn't feel like it's going to generate that good spin, but it surprised me. It feels a lot like the Shogun, where you're like, it doesn't, you can't stick it to my clothes. It's not going to be great spin.
We
but
might not
it does
see that
well.
again, John.
Okay, let's
What's
move on.
next?
Let's do the right there on top, the Vector.
I like the way this paddle looks.
I do too. It's a
got
little
a-
bit gamma-ish.
I
The
don't know.
obsidian-ish.
It's got a bit of a rounded top,
Uh-huh.
which I really like. I like the shape of this. The long handle. It's a firm handle. I really like that.
Isn't it funny how subtle differences in the
Yeah.
shape can turn you on or off of a paddle? Like the gammas are, I agree, the obsidians look a little funny because they're too squarish. That one's nearly the same, but it looks better in my
It's
opinion.
just a subtle roundedness to the top.
Yeah. Yeah. But so this is a newer company, so Versix, and this is their Vector paddle, and they have a couple of pros playing with it. So Jeannie Bouchard and Blaine Hovenier both play with this particular paddle. They have pro versions of it. So I think Jeannie's has a pink handle. I don't know what Blaine's handle color is, but they're all the same paddles. Raw carbon fiber texture, Gen 2 thermoformed edge foam.
15 mil.
15 mil.
Yeah.
I like the shape, but what I really like about this paddle is its pricing. It comes in at $130 flat before
crazy.
discount, and you can get a 10% discount with anybody's code, right? So you and I got a chance to hit with it today. What do you think, Eddie?
It's a B-52 bomber is what it is.
Very powerful paddle.
Good Lord.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't expecting it to come off that hot, given its specs, but it plays very powerful.
I felt like it was more powerful than the paddle text that we played with 2 weeks ago.
I'd put it close. I need more time with it, but it's getting close, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't do a side-by-side. It'd be interesting to do that. but
Yeah.
Man, this thing is crazy powerful.
Yeah, you were getting me with drives all day long today, and especially with this one. Good spin, too. I think it's over 2,000 spin.
Okay.
The face doesn't feel very textury, gritty, but something about it gets really good spin.
I don't know. I played with it the other day, and I felt like I was not getting the spin that I would have expected. But I was also playing with another paddle that's crazy spinny right before and after that.
Right.
So,
Right.
relatively speaking, wasn't to where that other paddle is.
Right.
But it's sufficient.
Like I said, I think it's over 2,000 when I did test it for RPM, which, that's good spin. It's not top tier, like 2,300 and above, like some of the paddles are getting today. But the longer handle definitely provided that leverage to help with the power. I don't know what else is giving it that power. I didn't see anything special about the layup, like an extra layer of anything or fiberglass. It just seems to be like your typical Gen 2. So hopefully it's not like a pre-crushed core or something, like an issue with that.
It did feel like it had a bit of trampoline.
Something was going on with it, yeah.
Because it doesn't play hard. It plays a little bit springy.
Yeah. Another thing that could add to its power is it did feel kind of head heavy. And that, if it does have a higher swing weight, I don't think I've measured it yet. But if it does have a higher swing weight, that's going to add to the power because you get just more power with that extra.
Slightly thinner core at 15 millimeters.
Yeah, which surprised me too because with thinner cores, you don't hit as hard from the baseline. But I think that's where this excelled more than the kitchen even. It's very poppy also. But the power with full swings was just like, whew. I wasn't expecting that with this paddle. But I think this is a solid paddle for $130. Pretty good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you served a couple where all I could manage to do was block it.
I was like, I'm going to get Eddie for those 16 drives he blew past me. But yeah, good price, pretty solid performing paddle.
Yeah.
Again, Versix Pickleball. All right, our last one for today, man. Eddie. Body Helix sent us, both you and I.
I don't know if a lot of people know about this company.
No, we talked about them before. They sent us a few paddles.
Yeah.
We did some comparisons with them like several months ago in the podcast. But this design was not a hit with a lot of people originally. So it was like this black laser painting on the edge. And then the original one was like black raw carbon fiber.
Still don't love it.
I kind of like it. I even like the original. Like something about it. Like it doesn't bother me. That most people hated it.
What was that initial paddle that we played?
It was the X4. This one's the X4 Gold Kevlar.
Oh, I thought it was like a much longer handle, like the X6 maybe.
No, that was a different one.
Okay.
So this is the same shape as before, same design, except they've replaced the raw carbon fiber with a Twill 3K golden Kevlar weave. So I mean, I think I kind of like it. I like the aesthetics of it.
I don't love the aesthetics, but I love the way it plays, man. This was a surprise to me because I didn't like the previous Body Helix models that we played with. And I think I said so at the time. But this one was a very, very pleasant surprise, and I have been enjoying the heck out of it the last week.
Yeah. You were playing great with it today. So it's a hybrid shape, similar to core shapeshifter, my main. So it felt very similar. Very familiar to me, I should say. I'd say stock, it's probably a little bit heavier. I did do the swing weight and everything. I just haven't put it in the database yet. But the grit on it is pretty insane. And you were ripping some
The grit has
spin.
held up very well.
Yeah, this one, I'm surprised. It feels almost fuzzy.
Yeah.
It feels like that Proton Series 4 fuzziness. But
I don't know, man. I love getting topspin on this thing. It's really an effective surface.
It's working for you, for sure.
And I think it's a triple layer. So there's carbon fiber and Kevlar.
Yeah, there's carbon fiber under the Kevlar.
Yeah.
Twill weave. But yeah, solid sweet spot. It is a little heavier stock than like, say, the 6.0 double black diamond. So you're going to have a little less hand speed, but the trade-off with that is a little wider sweet spot and more power. This one got really good power also. I was like everything between the Vector and this, I was like, geez, man, these two are hitting it much harder than I expected.
I can't believe the power on this thing for a Kevlar weave paddle. It's got to be up there, if not the most powerful Kevlar weave paddle.
It is. I was almost going to run my metrics again. I took it out yesterday and recorded with the radar gun. Just did like 4 paddles, and these two got so high, I was like, either I have a like super lively arm today, or the weather's off, or my radar gun is in the wrong position. I might rerun the values, but I think this one is like 80th something for percentile score for firepower, which not expected for this shape or a Kevlar paddle. Most of those are well below 80, and that one was even higher, the Vector.
And if the spin's not 95 plus, then I don't know what is.
I think the spin was just at 2,300 on average. So rips, spin seems pretty durable. I think Body Helix has made a really nice paddle here. So kind of happy for them because they're really good people. I really enjoy talking with them.
Okay.
And they've been very, very generous with sending us paddles to just test and not expecting anything in return, right? So I do like the company, I like the people, and now they have a quite good paddle.
I'm loving it, man. I open it up and I'm like, yeah, I don't like the way it looks, but I'll give it a try. Mm-hmm. And just start ripping drives with it, with topspin, and it's the most fun I've had recently with a paddle outside of the hush.
I was worried that the face would be too bright and I'd lose the ball with it. No, I've only played a few games with it. Didn't seem to be an issue today, though. Have you had any complaints while you're playing with it?
No one has said anything.
Okay. I feel like the brighter colors, like white on some of the Selkirk paddles, are more of an issue, like the big white spots on some of their amped or some of their power airs. This one, I was okay with it today.
Yeah, and feel the grip on that. That is solid.
Yeah. It seems to be a polyurethane molded handle. It's definitely harder.
I actually think it's one of the carbon fiber handles.
What do you mean? Like the strips on the side?
Or fully carbon fiber.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll take it apart and see. Did you take off the stock grip?
Yeah.
And put on just one over grip, or do you have two here?
Just one.
Okay.
Foam injected 360 carbon forged solid state handle. So I'm not sure what that
Foam
means.
injected 360.
Well, that's the paddle face, but the handle is carbon forged solid state. Is what
interesting. Because I could see the carbon forged being used as a description for thermoform paddles, because they do have the strip going down the sides of the handle, but that sounds like solid state means the whole thing is carbon fiber.
It feels very solid. The whole paddle feels very solid. If you like kind of a plush paddle, this isn't it. It hits hard like, a piece of plywood, but it hits hard.
I would say the feel is more forgiving than plywood. It's not quite as stiff as what's a really stiff paddle, like the Black Diamond from 6.0. This one is more in line with like a raw carbon fiber Gen 2, but definitely more powerful on average than Gen 2 paddles, and way more powerful than Kevlar paddles. So it was a surprise. The sweet spot's large on it. It spins great. Controllable too, even despite the power and pop, given the spin and the wide sweet spot. It's priced right too, $140, right? So yeah, good stuff from Body Helix. Anything else? Other impressions? You've been playing with it longer than me, Eddie.
No, it's just a solid all-rounder. It's going to be in my bag for a while. Mm-hmm. That and the new Monarchs.
I do like so Body Helix makes weighted edge tape that's made out of, what's the rubber? Silicone. I do like the idea because it's vibration damping. I've had the idea also. I was like, oh, we should make some edge guard tape, weighted tape out of various damping materials. I don't know, I didn't get a good feel on stock versus with how you weighted it up here, but I didn't like that they stick out a little bit. I could feel it when I'm on two-handed backhand.
They're very high profile.
Yeah.
I did notice that as well.
What are your thoughts, though? Did it reduce any vibrations for you?
No vibration reduction, but it did open up the sweet spot. Without it, there were a few dead spots I was feeling that were pretty much put aside by the weight.
How many grams are these each?
They're 3 grams.
Oh, so just like the red strips. Mm-hmm. That's impressive. I would figure they'd be like 1 gram each, but yeah. Okie dokie.
Good stuff, Body Helix.
Yes. All right, let's move on. We got some questions this week, which will kind of dovetail in with our deep dive. So, Eddie, you found some questions.
Yeah, Bippy999 asks, if I get a Slyce cap for my JOOLA mod TA-15, what would you recommend? A half-ounce Slyce cap, 1 ounce Slyce cap?
Okay.
How would you maneuver the weight, I guess, on your paddle to accommodate?
Right. I mean, I would definitely go with the ounce Slyce cap because you're taking off weight to begin with. I weighed I'll put it up in the B-roll. I actually took a photo. When I took the stock cap off the JOOLA mod TA-15, I weighed that together with the staples that I took out. Mm-hmm. I feel like it was like a 1/4 of an ounce total. So if you got the half-ounce Slyce cap, you'd only be adding another 14, 15 grams. And I don't think that's going to be that noticeable unless you're really tuned into your balance point. So I would go with the full ounce. I think most people prefer that one. I certainly do. That's what I used on mine, the 1 ounce or 28 gram cap. And Yeah, like I mentioned, a lot of people were kind of complaining about, man, this is a lot harder to take off the stock cap than I expected, because you do have to remove staples and pull it off. But with the right tools, it literally takes. It's like putting an overwrap on your paddle. But it's more laborious to me to take the stock grip off than it is to replace the cap. But I get it. Like, if you don't have the right tools, I just have one of these little Stanley kit that has an awl, which is basically a start point, and then another one that pries things out, like a tiny little hammer that you pry the nails out with. Those two things are all you need. To loosen them up with the awl, and you pry them out with the other thing. The staples come out pretty easily with that. And then you replace it. And then I kind of thicken up the bottom with some medical tape and wrap the medical tape so that the Slyce cap doesn't get
move
loose,
around. Yeah.
and then put the stock grip back over and then the over grip. You like to leave the stock grip off for most of your paddles and just use over grip, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, the question was which of the two Slyce caps, and that does lower the balance point. You'll notice that it gets whippier with wristy movements for sure with the Slyce cap on. I do recommend counterbalancing that 1 ounce on the base of the handle with some perimeter tape up here, so some tungsten tape. This is going to lead into our next question.
Right.
For the Mod TA-15, actually went against what I've been doing lately, which is that setup I just mentioned with the tape going all the way up from the top of the overgrip to somewhere around the middle of the paddle. And I used 2 of those 3-gram strips of lead tape right at 4 and 8, right where the widest part of the paddle. And the reason why I did that is because when I first hit with the Mod TA-15, I was like, I remember the sweet spot of the Perseus Gen 3 being a little wider. And I was getting some twisting. It was a very light paddle. And I was noticing mostly through the transition zone. Like if I would try to scoop a ball or somebody sped up with me, I tried to reset it. I just wasn't getting the feedback that I wanted. I usually dumped it into the net. So I wanted to shore up to beef up the twist weight quite a bit, and localizing the weight at 4 and 8 o'clock instead of spreading it down a little further helped increase that twist weight, and it certainly helped the paddle. And then once I weighted it up, same as I had the Gen 3 Perseus, they played the same. So the sweet spot wasn't smaller on the Mod TA-15.
And so that was our second question that we wanted to talk about, is like, what is the difference, or why would you choose a concentrated weight setup versus an elongated weight setup?
Right.
And I've noticed you tend to go with those 4, 5, 6 inch long strips of tungsten.
Right.
I tend to go more the shorter route. But what's your thinking behind a particular setup?
Yeah. My thinking on the Mod TA-15 is I wanted to focus specifically on increasing the twist weight. And the best way to do that is to stick the weights at the widest point of the paddle. The issue with doing that is the further you go up the side, the more you're going to impact the swing weight of the paddle. So if you put it right in the middle, you're going to increase the swing weight a lot. If you put it down here, not so much, because that's about where the balance point is. So anything below the balance point is going to minimize the impact on the swing weight. So I wanted to put a heavier amount with a shorter amount of tape right at the flare, the bottom of the flare at the widest points. And then I achieved what I wanted with that. The reason for spreading the weight out more is that if you want to affect the balance point, for example, if you want to lower the balance point more than you want to widen the twist weight, then you can do that by putting tape all the way down toward the handle, or even under the handle if you want to do that. Now, the Slyce cap's going to go a long way to doing that. And what I found with counterbalancing the Slyce cap is, I like lower balance points than stock on most paddles. So once I put the Slyce cap on, I do find it beneficial to counterbalance it with weight up here, because there's a weird kind of, if you put too much weight in the handle, it starts feeling weird. Mm-hmm. So I like to counterbalance it, but I don't want to lower the balance point too much. So that's the point of spreading that over 5-6 inches instead of, those 1.5 inch strips. Why do you like it more localized, Eddie?
Honestly, I'm not as sensitive to balance point, I don't think. I tend to go with the more concentrated strips because for me, it's easier to control that balance between swing weight and twist weight. And like you said, you're 100% right. You want to maximize twist weight without adding swing weight at all if possible, but minimizing that and getting that weight here in a very concentrated fashion lets you achieve both of those outcomes, right? I tend to aim right for the balance point of stock. So if it's right in here, I'll just put that concentrated lead strip kind of 50-50 right over the balance point. And that usually does the trick for me.
Makes sense. I would like to see tungsten in those concentrated strips also, those
That
3
would be
gram
nice.
tungsten strips. I think that would be very popular.
But playing with the graffiti, the swing weight tool that we both have, it's a lot of fun, and you can see huge changes in swing weight and twist weight by moving that even a half inch. Really, it's kind of really interesting to see how just maneuvering that way changes really everything about a paddle.
And I'll probably, even with edgeless paddles, never use edge tape. I don't want to turn people off of edge tape, because if you are concerned about scuffing up your edgeless paddle, then that's definitely a way to prevent that. But adding tape around the entire perimeter
doesn't seem like it would be much.
Doesn't seem like it much, but it raises the swing weight by at least 5 points, sometimes more than 5 points, which is
I used to
huge.
religiously put edge tape on everything. Before I even took that paddle to the court, there was edge tape on it.
Yeah.
And I never used edge tape anymore, even on an edgeless paddle.
I know, and then I wonder if it's one of those things where the technology allows us to see, and then we perceive, okay, it's five more swing weight points. It feels slower, or now we're just more tuned into paddles. I hope the latter, I hope it's not a...
I think it's the latter.
Yeah. But yeah, five swing weight points is big. That's a noticeable difference for anybody. And that's what edge tape is going to add.
So are you like me when you have a paddle that you really love, you're going to take to a tournament? Do you put it on a swing weight machine and play around with things till it's perfect, or do you just kind of wing it?
Well, I definitely don't wing it anymore. I mean, all the paddles that I get are processed, so they go through the metric testing with the radar gun and spin testing, and then I bring them down here and swing weight and twist weight and balance point them. You know what I mean? So
same.
Yeah. I love having that information. And if I'm playing with a paddle, I'm going to know what all those metrics are.
I think everyone should, through experimentation, try and figure out what their swing weight tolerance is first. If you can handle 125,
there are perks to that for sure.
Then go for it.
Right.
But if your tolerance level is more at a 116 or a 115, that's great information to know. Then you can set up your weight accordingly to move that weight as far up the paddle as you can to maximize twist weight until it hits that swing weight point.
Right.
That's how I do it, but
play around with it is the key. And I don't want to scare people off of adding swing weight, because there are perks to that. Heavier paddles with bigger swing weights feel great to hit the ball with, because there's more plow through. And they're just more forgiving. The sweet spot feels wider. They're more powerful. So all those things are great that come with the swing weight. The issue is being able to maneuver it as quickly during hands battles, primarily. And there are other things on the court where swing weight can hinder, but those are the main things. But like I said, I think I have a lower tolerance for swing weight than a lot of people, and a lot of pros, for example, I think have higher than like 120 plus swing weights on their paddles. And to me, that feels a little too heavy. I can get up around 120 and play okay, but I start noticing when I go back down, oh my God, my hands are so much faster around 115, 116. I love my maneuverability at 115, 116, but again, there are trade-offs, and it doesn't feel as good to hit the ball with that paddle.
Yeah, and some of it's, you're playing singles or doubles. Swing weight plays a huge role there.
Yeah, for sure.
Good stuff.
All right, Eddie, that is all I got.
All right, let's hit some more paddles.
Okay, I'll see you next week.
Yep, bye.